LCEA Joint Bargaining, November 21, 2019, beginning at 3:02.
All right, welcome everyone. Here for the wonderful topic of Best and Brightest. This joint bargaining session, bringing SEIU and LCEA to the table together, based on in the recognition and how it's defined in statute, and includes the folks that fall under the classification of parapro. I've got some packets I've put together, and I'd like to just give a brief overview. Most of it is supporting documentation that is in this, and that follows the cover sheet, and I'll kind of step through. We've had a few more talks about Best and Brightest probably through LCEA, definitely. So I just wanted to give an overview as we go through. It's with Best and Brightest it takes on different shapes and forms, and year out, and who knows, it might still be around in a different form next year. So
Please no.
we're hoping not, but
Please no.
maybe the legislature will not see fit. Essentially, you'll see on the cover sheet here, Lake County, our appropriation was $4.2,073,322. Of that appropriation, the charter schools, including conversion charters, get their proportionate share off of the top, which brings our total amount to $3,508,340. The several buckets that it's broken into is your recruitment, and according to statute, the recruitment and established in the conference report is up to $4,000, and most districts are not doing $4,000 for recruitment, and those are newly hired classroom teachers to the district. Another question that came in there was it says content area expert, and DOE shared through state board rule. They had an emergency hearing, and the state board rule establishes who is a content area expert, and it's very interesting. But we figured all of that in when we start talking about calculations, and those in the state board rule, it goes into different folks, whether you have a master's degree in certain subject areas, it gets broken down pretty in depth. But those are, I put a copy of the state board rule in this packet also. On retention, that was set, that's not a flexible amount. Classroom teachers only, that's not all of your other instructional personnel, just classroom teachers as defined in statute. They're $2,500 for those rated highly effective, and $1,000 for those rated effective. And in the retention, there are certain things that made schools eligible, and we had 19 total schools eligible in the district, and you'll see some of those are conversions and charters. And that list was established. We did an early, based on the criteria they gave us, we generated our own early list, and it matched the 19 that they wound up providing us. And there's a copy in your packet that shows where DOE reported the 19 schools. The recognition is where they include all instructional personnel as defined in 10-1201, A through E, and the E is the paraprofessionals, parapros that are included in that based on our codes within our system and those that fit, because we don't have like a para job description. It covers 3 different areas and that would be your teacher assistants, your sign language interpreters, and also your lab facilitators. And then your principal amounts, there's 6 eligible, there's 9 total when you count the conversions, but 6 eligible in the district out of the 19 schools, with an award amount that's set in stone of $5,000. A lot of the disqualifying factor from the 19 schools, breaking it down to the 9 or 6 within, was the 4 years. The 4 years is what really knocked people out. We had retirements and folks that had not been there as long at some of the qualifying schools. So there's, I wanted you guys to have the first supporting document. Just shows the allocation of the money to our district in comparison to what other districts receive. Obviously, you see there's a minimum allocation there, and then on top of that, it's based on your FTE. And the second document just shows the qualifying schools. I wanted everyone to have a copy of the. That's the best it could get. So I apologize for that. The next is just a copy of the statute for the teacher program. And then supporting the teacher program document, this is there's the couple pages, the only 2 paragraphs that really pertain to all of this. And this is this document with small print again. This was that's out of the conference report, and the last 2 paragraphs establishes that up to 4,000 and some of the other amounts that are set. Those because if you go straight to the statute, they're not listed in there. You have to go to the conference report in order to get that amount of detail. The next is your notice of emergency rule and the full text of the emergency rule, which established the different criteria for being a content area expert for the recruitment section. Then you have Florida Statute 101201, which is that A through E that defines. If you go down to number 2, instructional personnel, and then A through E defines the different sections of folks that work in under an instructional personnel title. This is the one that Best and Brightest had generated controversy over in the past because they like to exclude some of our folks like media specialists and people like that. So the definition of classroom teacher in A is what you used to hear a lot about, and they've still applied some restriction there in that folks from 2A are the only ones that can be qualified for the retention bonus that we mentioned earlier. The next sheet is the Best and Brightest principal program, and it just establishes what I've already said so far about the principal program. So that way, if you're super bored, you can review all that and look into it, or if you have questions throughout our conversations, we can reference and dig in a little deeper. I ran some numbers, and these are preliminary numbers for our district, so I kind of want to go through this first page here. But before I do that, well, let's go ahead and look at this first. And it's a lot of, could be confusing numbers here, but I'll give some explanation of what you got. You're on the left side there, the first yellow box is your fringe benefit rates, and that's what's applied to as the employer costs that come out off the bulk amounts that we would discuss. The second box down in the bottom left those are school numbers essentially, and those are your charters and the proportionate shares that have gone out to them. So you see around $615,000 their in proportionate share going out. Whenever you then you look as you go down on their description, you can see the different amounts. The principal award, all of these numbers are, keep in mind, are without conversion or regular charter. The principal award at 6, the amount column there is after employer costs are deducted from there, and then you wind up. So that's a total with benefits of $30,000 that's going to those 6 people. Your recruitment award, this is just I set at a common number. Of course, this number is flexible as we get to talking about the different amounts for different groups. Remember, that can be up to $4,000. One thing I did not mention that you guys might not be aware of, that recognition pot down at the bottom is basically what's left over per statute. Okay, so after the principal is paid, after the recruitment award is established, and you decide what's appropriate for that, and then your retentions, which are hard numbers that are established in statute, what's left on the bottom is what goes into that recognition pot. So I just set that at 1,000 because it's a number that's been floating around a lot of districts. That would equal out pretty, it's easy math there when it's at 1,000. We have currently 143 teachers that would qualify in that for the recruitment award.
143.
So that's that in that first column. And some of these numbers where they might seem lower than projected earlier, just remember it's because we backed out all those conversion charters. When you get to retention, you've got, remember this is at the not the 19 schools, you back out the charters, and it's 422 qualify for that. At the set bulk amount after employer costs, the 2,500 would go down to that 2,141 number. Effective, 319 qualified. That's 856 after employer costs out of the $1,000 allocation. And then when you get into recognition, we had talked a little bit about in LCEA bargaining and possibly of those numbers being the same where a teacher qualifies as highly effective or effective. So those numbers are set at 1,000 there. My rationale behind that is basically you definitely would not want that. You probably would not want recognition teachers receiving more than the effective retention
Right.
teachers. It just made good logic to me. And then I set the parapros because at 600 for the allocation, but a lot of districts that I've seen it's running in about 500 where those folks are coming in. So that amount is there, but all the amounts and numbers are flexible where they can be flexible. That's basically at the core of what we're discussing today. So after all said and done, and you have our total district, if you pull the principal awards and the retention awards out, essentially you've got about 1.9 to work around there with recognition. That's if the recruitment award is set at 1,000. So if you look at that remaining balance and remaining balance including reserve, here's the reason for the fund reserve. You've got down at you've got a certain number of people around 200, that 263 number that's in that top chart. Those are new hires, and they're going to fall into a couple different categories. They're going to be new and they're not qualified to receive it because they haven't been teaching before and they do not have a previous record of evaluation with us or anyone else. Or the folks you hire from a different district, we would have to go through another verification period where they have a year by contract to get in their previous experience, kind of like that, but even when we pull in previous experience, we don't necessarily pull in their evaluation records. So they would need to retrieve their evaluation records and provide those to us, and be able to receive the best and brightest. Because the way best and brightest has been done in the past, if you can't, from one district to another, you don't discriminate on best and brightest. So that's why that cushion is there. So not the full 263 that could be reviewed. We estimated 150 is what we would need to hold some back for, which that could be up to $150,000. And then you'll see, because the numbers get really weird when they start moving around, that's where that remaining balance of 28,000 is there. And what I would propose is, after all said and done, we set a hard fast date at the end of the year where whatever is left over would be distributed based on whatever cost factors we decide on now. And because once you go to, let's say the full, out of the 260, the 100 or so are able to get their verification into us, then that 28,000 gets spread. It gets pretty minuscule once you start spreading it across this many people. So it'll probably throw a couple bucks in everybody's check at the end. It wouldn't have super significant impact. But when you look at the, when you start moving the amounts around and what's needed to hold for recognition offset there for a balance, that's where those numbers get. We have to, that 28,000, when you start moving numbers around, all of a sudden goes in the red pretty quick when you start raising numbers. So basically, what we need to decide is where you guys feel like what is fair and what's the correct philosophy as far as amounts and who should get what. I can tell you, as bringing this projection forward from a district standpoint, I'm fine with this projection. So if there's something other than this projection, then we need to hash it out here. So if you go to that back page, it kind of shows the number and cost factors. The cost factor, where that came in on the, where you'll see it says true down at the bottom. We set the pairs kind of like some of our similar rules where we want it to fall within 50 to 75% of what a teacher would get. So that's where that number came from. So I know it's a lot. And it's somewhat complicated. As much as they can complicate it, they try to, being in the legislature. But I think we've covered a lot of bases. One thing with the parapros coming in new, what I've seen a lot of districts do is, because you have to be effective or highly effective, what I've seen some districts do is whatever is a satisfactory evaluation, because not many people have those for non-instructional, rated highly effective, they say basically a satisfaction would be equal to an effective evaluation. So that's kind of where we're at, and I want to open the table up to you guys to discuss or talk about where your concerns or your highlights are.
Well, I'll start.
Okay.
Couple of questions just to clarify.
Okay.
In the Recruitment Award, those 143 people, that
Mhm.
does not include anyone, or does it, that resigned from Lake County and got rehired by Lake County? Would there be any in that 143 receiving that money there?
It's possible.
Okay.
There would probably not be, if they had a true break-in service, then it's possible they could be in that category.
Okay, so it would require the break-in service in order to,
Yeah.
because none of these categories double dip. I'm going to use that word. Correct?
And that's what we ran the scenarios, because that's what I was worried about, was double dipping, and there were very small number. I can't remember exactly, but I'm talking about very small number that would double dip, and if if there was the potential for them to double dip, the way the background of the spreadsheet is set up, it errs to the higher amount for that individual.
So you only get one award.
You only get one of them?
Correct. Because what I was worried about first, you know, before we started analyzing it really hard, the potential of double dip, I was like, oh my gosh, that could shrink all of it up really quick. And then once we started looking, and it's mainly because of that state board rule that really narrows down that recruitment pot really fast.
Okay, so if we're, like you're saying, for example, then, if someone were to also receive recruitment of, let's say, as we go with $1,000, but then they also were highly effective, so they get the retention, they would receive the retention $2,500 and not the $1,000.
That is correct.
And that would be, that situation would be more of those 263 people that may have come from a different county, correct? In your example, because you couldn't be highly effective here.
Well, they
if
would
you
not,
knew.
keep in mind, the retention, this is also where it narrows down, the retention is only at those 19 schools identified by the state.
Well, see, and this is where, and I'll just be brutally honest and frank. You said that Best and Brightest doesn't discriminate between county to county, but we're discriminating in those 19 schools. Because you have,
that's
well,
Yeah.
I understand that, but here's the other side of it. You have instructional staff that contributed and worked towards that 2,500 and that 1,500, or that 1,000. My feeling is, those people should be recognized. There are probably 3 or 4 people at each school. I mean, it's minimal numbers, that those people within that recognition category should receive that allocated amount before we distribute the remaining funds.
All right, I need you to break it down for me one more time.
Okay, so in retention, you are only paying instructional, what is it, the definition of instructional, which does not include A to E,
It's classroom.
classroom.
Correct.
You have people on those 19 campuses
Mhm.
that are directly impacting and were a direct impact of the results of those schools, like your coaches, like your guidance counselors, that are instructional positions that are not going to receive that, or your media specialists. Those people need to be recognized in those schools. And I'm not saying with just the $1,000 recognition.
So you're saying, I guess here's where it gets really icky with that, is that now all of a sudden you're putting in a stipulation that how they determine those 19 schools and the schools that sit within those 19 schools, it's not real impressive logic, I'm gonna be honest with you. So you're creating a stipulation based on, you're gonna qualify because you're one of these anointed 19 from the state. So we're gonna further that
But you're gonna
thought.
further, these people have worked as hard as the others towards that cause.
I agree.
They are as deserving as the others. And I think we all want to get everybody the most amount of money possible. But I think it's minimal people, and I think consideration from the county standpoint needs to be with those people as well.
I apologize for being late as fast as I could get here. Just a point of clarification. So I hear the 19 schools. Now, is the money going to some of the other 19 schools? Some of the other schools?
Okay.
What's left
basically-
over?
All right, yes. Basically
Got
what
it.
we're looking at is 19 schools, and then the amount that's left over, $1,000 per teacher, effective or highly effective,
Mhm.
at all the other schools.
Okay. And so what you're arguing is that $1,000 for the effective and highly effective teachers should come down because in those 19 schools, there's a handful in each school of other instructionals who aren't being recognized the same as classroom people.
Well, I'm not saying that it has to come down here. It may come down in the recruitment. No, it could come down in the recruitment. We have not negotiated $1,000 for
You mean in
recruitment.
recognition?
No, because the monies is all split. We have not finalized that $1,000. So there is still money there to play with. So I think we also have to look at what is the message we want to send. Yes, we need teachers, but those teachers are already coming in at a higher salary than some of those comparable people that have years of experience. But we're going to give them the same bonus as those recognition teachers. I don't think that's right, but I also feel like those teachers at the 19 schools that are instructional deserve those funds.
I'll add 2 cents to that. I'm in agreement, realizing what a number crunch it will be, but it is a handful in each. Besides the outside, because I think it's an important precedent in general, because we've always gone back and forth on this. It's like we are all instructional, and Lake Mineola is getting A money, and we have to vote, and we have to go to the SAC. And we're giving it to our food service, and we're giving it to our custodial. It's part of the whole culture thing, if I may. And our media specialists, especially, you know what? It's not going to be perfect either, because there will always be somebody who says, do they really carry their weight? But on the whole, it's an important, we are all instructional. We are all teachers in our own way. And I think that would be a powerful message from all of us.
I think that's why the only number that, if you're a teacher and you're in this district, the only number that rises above the 1,000 is a hard number that we don't have flexibility on, and that's the reason I had the flat numbers of 1,000 there, because and I get what you're saying, there's some flexibility in that $1,000, but once you try, if you were to, I would just be cautious of saying, okay, well, your instructional that you have in those 19 schools that were also highly effective, is who you're talking about, right?
Yes.
That number is gonna absorb a whole lot, and those 19 schools were selected pretty arbitrarily. So that's what the fact that those 19 schools were established by the state is extremely good. I mean, you're going to have a tremendous amount of other highly effective teachers throughout the district as a whole that are in those 19 or not, that are still going to receive $1,000. And to be honest with you, it ranges all over the place on those schools. I mean, it is really unfortunate that they were selected how they were.
Yes, and I can't talk to how they were selected. I can't talk to what the state, I mean, we're looking at the best and brightest put by the state, which we all have probably issues with as well. But I'm saying you're even making a further divide even within those schools for people leaving coaching positions, people not staying, because you know what? Why should they? They're not, I'm just putting that out there. I don't think you're putting more of a divide in.
Well, I'm going to tell you.
But the same would be true for a highly effective teacher in one of the other schools.
Yeah.
Well, the difference there
There's
is
a larger collective outside of those
to
19 schools that are going
right.
to not get a good deal than the ones who are in those 19 schools. And here's the deal.
Right.
If we're hinging whether we're coming or going from Lake County on this year's version, wait till you see next year's version. So that's where I'm cautious of building on. I'm cautious of building on the state's rationale.
I understand that, and I have to be careful too, because we're one of the 19.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to be honest with you. I'm rich, so I'm not really interested in the pittance that the state gives me. So with that speaking, though, like Lake Mineola, as I understood it, came in like we qualified when there was like the third grandfathering, or there were 3 choices, right? Wasn't it this cluster hyphen?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I do understand what you're saying in that context. And I still come down on the fact that, and at least the teachers that I talk to inside and outside of Lake Mineola are aware of the absurdity of this whole thing. So I'm comfortable that it can be discussed as far as the absurdity, but here's what the state said, here's what the state said. We've been living with that, that's what we live with, you know, unfunded mandate city.
And the divide and conquer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I am, I'm really interested in addressing something that we have, that has added as much frustration internally as the whole skipping the step and missing a letter, and that is the fact that, hey, I've got instructional in my title too. If this, I understand exactly what you're saying. I am comfortable taking a crappy number from the state, which a lot of our membership understand the state, and saying, and we're giving it to all instructional staff, and by the way, that includes guidance counselors, media specialists, and reading coaches. I think that's I honestly think that's a huge statement from where we have been. And I totally understand what you're saying too.
I know,
Well,
it's
here-
absurd.
Just,
Yeah.
and I'm open to whichever direction we're headed here. I just, if you pull it anywhere up from other than recruitment,
It
you're
hurts.
taking money away from everybody else.
Everybody else.
So that's where you gotta be really careful. And we can, we can take a second, I'd like to hear you guys' initial perspective, because we've launched off pretty deep already. So can you guys share some initial perspective?
I'm not sure if everybody understands, so this, and I think so the 19 schools are gonna qualify, everybody's gonna qualify for something, but there's 19 schools, some of them are gonna get more.
Correct.
So that's what,
For
Classroom teachers.
classroom teachers at the 19 schools, based on, they had 3 different models that could qualify you in your calculations as a school who was essentially a retention school. And it, at first, before they clarified for us, I'm like, okay, well, we're gonna go with the most conservative approach, and it's gonna drop the most amount of money down into the bottom bucket. And they said, oh, no. They can qualify as long as they qualify in each one of the ways you can calculate this. And that's when that number jumped from like 2 to 3 schools to 19. So we could have eliminated some of the discussion we're having. It would have been a very small group that felt that way, but they blew it up to almost half our schools. So
So, the 1,000 recognition, that would include non-classroom teachers too,
Correct.
right?
That's
Yes, sir.
everybody.
That would be everybody.
yes, including the non-classroom teachers at
The
their
19
At-
schools.
at the retention schools.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and I bring this up because I just feel like there is still issues with the Best and Brightest, and I think we all agree. But I think we all agree that we want to get everybody the most amount of money possible too. But we're also working with what the state has given us.
Correct. Which unfortunately, the state has said that in the retention, it is classroom teachers.
Well, I understand that, but there's still the other
I mean,
part of it.
which
But
means-
I personally don't think $1,000 recruitment is in line. That's just my personal. And I would speak for people that I have spoken with. It's not, I think teachers today feel like they are still reliving the fact that the new salary is already there. And I think we need to show it, since our bargaining sessions are still ongoing, that we really do want the money to go to the people that have been here.
I think I wholeheartedly agree with you. I just, and this is just my opinion, I don't feel like Best and Brightest is the right
No.
area to be able to even make a halfway attempt at addressing that issue. It's a much larger issue than what they've given us money to do with here. Because I'm
Right. But money can be, what people get fired up about.
Mhm.
And if they, I feel like if they see that recruitment, even at that level, I don't think that people will be happy.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot for you guys to think about, because, you got a lot of new folks you're probably gonna hear from, also. And some of them, when you blow up the larger picture, trust me, I'm Lake County loyal, but you blow up that larger picture and you've got a lot of experienced educators also, from the state of Florida, so I mean, that's,
But you said they would be qualifying for that under the 263, correct? So those, they would qualify, because you said it doesn't discriminate across counties.
I'm sorry, which one?
Well, you were just saying that there's a lot of educators that have come to Lake County from all over the state, but we're considering those, and that's where that reserve money is still pending, correct?
That will depend on the categories that they fall into.
So we are
But
accounting for-
they won't be, those new people will not qualify for the retention. They have to be there a
Have been
number
there
of
last
years.
year.
Yeah.
3 years, right?
Yeah.
Oh, no, not retention. I'm saying they're still either gonna get something in recruitment or recognition. They're gonna get it in one
If
of the
they
two.
provide verification, yes.
Right. And if they don't, then they're still getting a recruitment bonus for coming through Best and Brightest.
So if we lower that to 750 rather than 1,000, that would actually only benefit 13 people. Because you're talking difference of 1,500 retention between effective and highly effective. So it would only benefit 13 people, 13 and a third actually.
Good conversation.
Because here, and I guess the way I'm seeing it in my mind is if I've got, so I'm at least quoting the right schools off the list.
That's 35 people. Your number's not right. 143 people times $250.
No, I'm going the other way.
Well, you've got to go with the allocation because the fees are off the full amount. So you take 250 off the top, off this. So it's 143 times 250, which is 35,750. Divided by 1,000, if that's what we're giving in the recognition bucket, that's almost 38 more people. Little.
But it's $1,500 difference between effective and highly effective.
No, you can't change the retention.
You can't
You can
change
only
it.
put it in this pot of money,
But you're-
which right now is 1,000.
Yeah.
So it's 35 more people.
So you're,
That's what it's comparable to. It's $35,000.
we're not talking the highly effective people who
No,
are in a 19 schools.
no, I was just trying,
Who
you were
are-
saying bring recruitment to 750.
Yeah, and it would only improve 13 people highly effective over effective in those 19 schools.
Okay, I was just saying bulk money was 35,000, and I was saying in here, I wasn't figuring this out. You were looking at what I was saying earlier. That's not how I figured it.
So you're saying a handful of people, yeah, 13 it would be, who would benefit. So it'd get 1,500 over the 1,000.
These are also, the recognition numbers include people at the district level that are instructional?
It's all instructional.
Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to clarify. I know, I just want to make sure.
So that would be 107 minus 143 equals 107 divided by, no, that's all right. gift, I hope.
Okay, so that-
35,000 divided by, and those 20 people.
And how many people are you saying are at each school, 3 or 4?
I don't know.
Media specialists, usually 1 or 2 coaches, possibly 2 guidance counselors or 1 guidance counselor. Each school is a little different.
Yeah, there's gonna be more than that, but yeah.
So say 5.
What are your thoughts on the recruitment money, the amount?
Well, I'm just
Yeah.
giving an influence.
Yeah. What are you thinking is, based on
Well,
what?
the
People
recruitment,
feel-
well, and there again, the recruitment money, that's why they put it up at $4,000, that's to get people, to come again. But again, that's the thing for a state to come in and say, yeah, we're gonna recruit you, we're gonna give you $4,000. Again, it's divisive, it's getting people to move back and forth and move to a different school and move to different places.
The
But that's
$4,000
what-
is only for,
It's for newly hired classroom
oh, up to,
teachers.
yes.
Up to the $4,000.
Right, but what I'm saying is, what do you think, based on all your members and the position of past salaries and the adjustment of the base salary, what do you feel is a fair amount in even that recruitment bucket? That's a hard
Yeah,
thing to,
and you gotta realize the people who are eligible for that know the law says up to 4,000. And they're gonna come back and complain saying, well, the law allows up to 4,000. You're only giving me 500.
And this is for new
I know
recruitment, they
that's
were hired
kind of
last year and they served the whole year last year?
This
year.
This
So my,
year.
my 10 new teachers will get 4,000 each?
no.
If they're in
It
certain
law says they
categories.
could get up to that.
Up to that, right,
Up
right.
to that.
If they meet certain
Have that factored
categories.
in at 1,000.
Yeah, that,
Got it.
now that's the,
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, they can't be highly effective yet.
Yeah, and again, that's getting people, to move around. Again, it's getting people decisive between new hires and veteran teachers, and it's the same issue that, of course, Tallahassee keeps
I just, that, believe that.
coming up with, which again is going to be all divisive.
Mhm.
Whether we give them $4,000 or we give them $1,000.
A question on this though too is the classroom, this is based on classroom teacher from last year, correct?
No, that's what I just asked.
So a
Which-
classroom,
which bucket?
Retention? Or recruitment?
retention, highly effective.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
If that person was a classroom teacher and is moved to a non-load bearing instructional position that would not qualify currently, they would still get that retention piece, correct?
All right, let me think through. So you're
Classroom
saying
teacher
if
last
they
year.
move from, say, a 3rd grade classroom teacher
To a past teacher.
to a past teacher, and they had been at the school for the 2
2 years.
2 years that it was required.
But it says including the current year.
Including the current year, I think applies to them being at the same school, is the way I've read that. I'm not sure. Oh, okay, so you're.
I'm sorry.
No, it just needs to be,
This is
I don't
why
know
we're
if you're
here.
wrong, I think it just needs to be tightened up.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, to
Because
me,
they got
so
the
if it
highly
says
effective from that job.
including the current year, meaning that if you switch then to a coach,
Or past, I'm thinking maybe like some of these past positions that we've opened up, those are not classroom
They're not
teachers, but they're still
I guess that
instructional.
boils down to, I think, and a classroom teacher that's been rated highly effective or effective preceding year and teach in school for 2 consecutive years. My thing is if they're instructional, they're teaching.
Yeah, if they got the highly effective part, then they got it from when they were a classroom teacher. So without,
But it's saying including the current year,
No.
meaning that you would be in the same,
So it really is gonna come down, how do we determine?
interpret it, yeah.
I'm gonna just keep eating my candy.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, you're-
I believe the way I read is that including the current year has to do with them teaching in the school for 2 consecutive years. And maybe not necessarily in the same instructional position. Let me go, I want to go ask a clarification question real quick on how we ran these and to see if they're in that number. Trap or something.
I have a Charlene question.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out, for example, you know,
Speech and language therapist.
we got 2 media specialists, because one of them's an ILS. We've got 5 that qualify for guidance counselor. We got 1 reading coach, and I have a testing coordinator. Those are the instructional who
They
are
would-
non-load bearing.
Correct.
So that's
They would
9
be in the
people.
recognition fund.
And then you've also got theoretically,
Now, that was maybe my next question. Where does ESE fit in all this?
What do you mean, what kind of pieces?
Well, that's why I said I wish
Well,
Charlene was here,
ESE
because
Well,
ESE is a
on your-
mystery to me.
But on your campus, if they're,
I have
if they're
ESE
highly
teachers.
effective.
Then they're-
right,
then they're
Right.
self-contained and you have
They're
inclusion.
because they're
Right.
instructional.
Because they're
But
instructional.
they're both instructional.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
sometimes some of the ESE folks don't get a roster because they're inclusion, and they say the regular
Oh.
teacher gets the roster,
Yeah.
you don't.
Yeah,
So there's another,
yeah,
Good.
that's the point I was
Oh,
getting
so
to.
you're talking a VE teacher that just is doing supports. I know in elementary though, because of our intervention block, they have to have classroom roster under them.
But let's be clear, they're not just doing support. They have a classroom, it's just that the classroom teacher's responsible for the grading.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
That's right.
at least in high school, I don't know. what
so,
it's like.
so
So we might need to have.
technically they don't have a roster, so they're not a classroom teacher.
Right.
Yeah, we've dealt with that.
Okay.
All right, this
It's
is,
a problem.
based on these calculations, it was interpreted at the date certain of their assignment as the October FTE date. So basically, if they were in a retention school and moved as a highly effective classroom teacher and moved to a CRT, they are not included in that retention amount. They're in the recognition amount.
Okay.
So, and now, but what I did get clarification on also is pass is still coded as a classroom.
Classroom teacher. that's
Fine.
what I would think.
How is that when they don't have a class under
Well,
them?
because
Most
they
of them
do have
a lot
kids
of
in
them do.
class.
They're,
But if coaches are teaching kids all, every day in intervention block, I mean, so it's the same thing. How can you call them, when they don't have a roster? They do not have a roster. They do not have a kids they see every day. So you're cutting hairs here.
Then you have ESE intervention or inclusion, who don't have a roster because the regular
Well,
classroom teacher has the roster.
They have you have kids assigned to you
because the IEPs.
because of the IEPs and your caseload there.
Yep, it's because of that.
'Cause
That's what I
they-
thought they would, but I didn't know about your
I know.
situation.
And also, where I'm coming out, you know, is this is not the program or the forum. It's a board discussion,
Oh,
but it's not the forum. It's like, okay, we have some money, Best and Bryce, God help us. But on the bigger thing, at least from where I'm sitting, on the bigger issue, which may not be, it's certainly not this year, we can bring it up next year, is like, can we get the title? I don't understand why it's all this. Now, that may be
No.
history.
No, it's the
I think
legislature, but you're right.
Oh, really? Legislature
No.
is the type, I want a teacher, an instructional teacher to be an instructional teacher. You
It's the
touch
way
a
we quote
kid.
them in
No,
Skyward.
no, it's
We quote
absolutely,
'em.
1012.01 is how they're defined in statute, but I get it,
Right,
there are
but-
some
Right,
nuances,
it's how
like
we
the past
code it, too.
positions are new also.
But you could also take, and this is, I know I'm getting off complete tangent here, but the instructional positions, they are teaching intervention blocks, they are doing small groups. They could code them as a classroom teacher 5% of their day,
They could.
and now they would be a classroom. But we as a county do not do that, which is not correct. and not fair if we're going to ban them. So maybe you're right, we work this out for the future.
Yeah. that's
Because
it.
we're not being equal to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And plus, we can do a little more mapping out between now and when we open up the subjects next year. I'm not trying to kick it down the road, I'm just
No,
saying,
I'm with you.
Chad said it perfectly, this is,
That was the
this is,
rationale of where I'm at. And instructional purposes. As there- And keep in mind, these numbers that you're looking at is based on 15 schools really, because we keep saying 19, but
Right.
4 of those are backed out because
Because
of
of
charters,
charters.
and they've already
And that's
received a
theirs.
proportionate share because they get the
Over here.
They get theirs
scrape
off
off
the
the
top.
top.
They get the full.
Sorry, cameras probably catch me rolling my eyes.
Similar to device of training.
So in a minute, we're looking at, with this plan, everybody, whether they're classroom, non-classroom, whatever, guidance counselors, $1,000. Now historically, the school board has set $750 for the non-classroom until last year. But then $1,000 minimum. If you're in one of these Vegas schools, the Lucky 15, and you're highly effective, say you're hitting snake eyes or boxcars, you're getting 15 or 2,500.
And I think we just have to warn them, don't leave that school yet, because the new version is way more convoluted than this one, so.
Oh, we haven't seen the new version.
Well, what the governor mentioned this past week,
Oh,
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
it
crazy.
breaks them into 3 different tiers.
Oh, yeah,
they're-
percentages.
It gets wild.
Oh, yeah.
So we were hoping they just do away with it
yeah.
That's-
yeah.
and put it in the
Yeah.
BSA. So we're not giving up on that hope.
That's our goal.
On what the governor says and what the House and the Senate do are 2 totally different things a lot of times. So I don't think he's gonna get that settled. But that's just-
Well, we're just glad they didn't put $1 billion on the table. We can work from there.
I just have one, and you may have covered it already, one little cosmetic thing for me. Realizing that I'm in the 2,500 just by the luck of the world, not because I've done anything. Highly effective recognition is the same as effective recognition.
Correct.
Shouldn't we take a little out of highly effective retention to kind of say that highly effective matters, or you can't?
You
You
cannot
cannot.
adjust that $2,500.
Thank you.
That
Okay.
came from the state.
And that's the answer to that? All right.
Yep, that
I
came
wish
from
we
the state.
could.
That's
No, I hear you.
That's that same thing, it would then have to come out of recruitment or the other.
I'm there.
Well,
And you already got recruitment at 1,000, which is a
Well,
lot
that's
better
if you
than
leave it at
4,000,
1,000.
yeah.
Well,
And
and
the state is defined, the retention. So.
And where the recruitment is kind of the bone contingent, just remember those are folks that are in truly difficult to staff areas. At least there is that caveat. There's a pretty high mark to qualify for that in that state board rule. So
Well, I've already committed to giving $1,400 to the robotics club to buy one of those rugs that they can thing
That's
on, so
awesome.
I'm cool.
That's awesome.
I, you know, again, I'm looking at this, I just live in a practical world. This is Christmas presents. This is paying the bill in January, so
Yeah,
I don't know if we have to caucus. But, you know.
Yeah, let's do. Got room open over there?
since there's just 3 of us or 4 of us, we can step out.
Okay, while you're out,
Yes.
while you're out, could you get me a sandwich?
Sure. Freaky fast.
Carl Montgomery.
I need to check with Sherry and see as far as press release wise what goes with that, but at least I can get some of the machine moving in the background, and I'll have something hopefully for you guys to sign very soon.
Okay.
Nothing, Herb, Sherry, If she's swamped and can't, I can bang something out for her.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
but only as a matter of, is there any way you can get someone else to do it?
Okay,
It's hers.
all right. And then we'll, as soon as she gets done with that, she'll know to send you guys a draft for review and to offer, questions.
Okay.
So the speech and language therapist that we hire, not contracted,
Right.
would
Correct.
be in that
Correct.
number. The
And the same
interpreters
with the
would be
interpreters that are
Correct.
with the district.
that are
and-
district hired,
Right.
not contracted.
Not
Right, and the lab facilitators.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure of that.
Question. Our speech language person is retiring Friday. She fall into, she get,
It's,
Probably not.
she's done there for 20 years.
if they have to be active in the system, and we go through that kind of with raises
Yeah.
and things also sometimes, so no.
Probably not.
Usually when bonuses are given out, if you weren't there on a day of payday, you don't get it.
Okay,
Yeah.
present to win.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way the county is.
Yeah.
Tell people to wait.
Yep. Present
Unless
to
we
win.
want to do a lawsuit and that.
And that's true.
I'll buy her a rug.
Your retirement.
Can I have a bouncy ball seat?
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll see you guys on the floor.
I've got donuts.